Welcome to episode 2 of Joe's Java Jive, and I'm
Episode
so
2?
thankful. This is episode 2, and Norm Magnusson is here with us. How you doing today, Norm?
Pretty good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well, and I'm even better that I'm discussing this with a fellow podcaster, an amazing artist and actor, and just someone who's been such an inspiration and a creative collaborator since I met you. So, Norm, welcome. I'd be honored to have you on any podcast ever, especially my very first one, Joe's Java Jive. Welcome.
Nice. Well, thanks, Joe. Thanks for asking me to be here.
Absolutely. You're such an amazing person, and I've loved every second since I've gotten to know you, seeing what you do, what you have done in your past, and what you strive to do on this planet is just all amazing. So, why don't we give the folks just a little bit of a intro to who you are? Where were you born, and tell me a little bit about your initial family life there.
You know, I'm gonna start with my dad, whose story is fucking amazing. He grew up dirt poor in like rural Illinois in corn country, and he lied about his age and went down and enlisted in the Navy. He'd never seen the sea, never seen an ocean, and he joined the Navy. And then he went to school in the GI Bill, and came home, had a couple of kids, me and my big sister,
Wow.
and worked his way up sort of the corporate ladder. And so I grew up mostly in Cincinnati. I was born in Chicago, and then
1960, right?
lived in Long Beach, California, and Wilmington, Delaware, and Morristown, New Jersey, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and
Wow.
Dallas, Texas, and New York City. And now I'm here in Rhinebeck.
Oh, amazing. What a journey. So when did you finally move to New York State?
Moved to New York right after college, which I graduated in '82, and I had a job lined up in New York City.
Where'd you go to school?
SMU in Dallas, Texas.
Amazing. Wow. So you were living where in high school?
High school was Cincinnati. I graduated high school in Cincinnati. Cincinnati was 6th grade through high school graduation.
Wow. So that's a little bit about your dad. And how about your mom? What was she like growing up?
My mom was so sweet. She was an artist, and she grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is a medium-sized city. She grew up in suburban Fort Wayne, and she was great. She went on to become an artist, and she studied art in college. And it was so inspiring for me as a kid to have somebody making art around the house and to see that process and to see those things, taking form out of nothingness.
Yes, that is what art is, right? Taking nothing, the blank page, the blank canvas, and putting something down. And you've been doing that for as long as I can see here. I know that you went to college now, so it sounds like you made your way out to Texas in school. Were you originally studying art as well and following in your mom's footsteps?
No, I graduated with two majors, English and economics. And and I had jobs in college. I worked as a bartender, which was great, but didn't seem like a career. And I worked for an investment banking house, Lehman Brothers. And because I had this economics major, I seriously considered that kind of a job, a finance job. And so I was in this office, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 afternoons a week. And it was interesting. Then I went home one summer. I think it must have been between sophomore and junior year. And I had a job putting, re-roofing houses, putting on roofs and putting up sheet rock, and on studs in rooms that were being finished. And I loved that. I loved so much being able to look at the end of the day and see what you'd done. And whereas the finance stuff, like at the end of the day, numbers were different on a computer monitor somewhere. I'm like, well, that's not very satisfying. And I realized how much I really enjoyed seeing things, seeing the fruits of your labors made manifest.
Yes, that's such a rewarding part of art. You put your time in, and it shows. And I know together we've collaborated on many artistic endeavors, and we'll get into all of that. But it's incredible to hear that you were inspired. Was there sort of a first art piece or a moment where you really connected and said, okay, this is something not only that I enjoy doing, but I might be pretty good at it?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, um, I did. I remember being home from college, maybe after freshman year, and sitting down and doing a self portrait in pencil, and it
Mm.
took forever. And it turned out it's like, oh my god, it looks like me, and that was really very satisfying. And so I wanted to do more of that, but I didn't study art in college. I didn't really do much. And then when I moved to New York City, I had some paints and canvases my mom had given me, and they were just sitting in the closet. My roommate said, well, let's paint. I'm like, all right, let's paint. And so we did. And I really got the bug. He was
Yeah.
much better than I was, but he didn't get the bug.
Yeah.
And so I kept at it.
That's it. And it takes time and dedication for someone who's maybe not very good with their hands and doesn't want to ever pick up a paintbrush or a pencil. What would you say? It's not for everybody, but what would you say to someone who thinks, man, I wish I could do that?
Uh, I would say this. I've never felt that I was a good draftsman. Like I'm terrible at drawing,
Yeah.
and one time I got invited to go talk to this class, I forget, like a middle school class or something, and talk to them about drawing. It was like National Drawing Day or some shit. And I went and spoke to these class kids. I'm like, what am I going to say? Like, I'm a miserable draftsman. What am I going to say to them? And I realized that my failures as a draftsman, the things that I see, it's like, well, that's not good enough. That could be better. That's not what that looks like or whatever. That all of those failures taken together were what created an ownable style. And
Mm.
so I told the kids, as I'm telling you now, that there's nobody in the world who's better at being better at drawing, just like Norm Magnusson, than Norm Magnusson. Like, my style is, as horrible as it is unique. So I think it's good when people can understand that their shortcomings, taken in their entirety, in the world of art anyway, are more like personal style than
Yeah.
failures.
Oh, that's such good advice. And I think that's really good no matter what your art form is. I use that same kind of logic. Just now, early on, I'm starting to do stand-up comedy and tell stories. And it's that same kind of thing. We're not all good at it, but if I can do it my way and in my own unique voice, that's a success, at least for now, to
Oh
get
yeah.
started.
Hey, let me ask you something. Do you edit these things afterwards?
Yeah, a little bit, but to be honest with you, for this start, it's a little raw, a little ugly. So if there's,
Someone's at the door. Do you mind if I go get it?
go ahead and grab it, and I'll talk a little bit to the camera. This is what it's all about: spontaneous Joe's Java Jive. Norm is just getting started here to tell us a little bit about who he is and what's going on. But you already know, to create something your own way and with your unique perspective, your shortcomings, maybe maybe you don't have great handwriting, maybe you don't have an artistic voice yet, but just going for it and giving it a shot, you might get the itch like Norm did.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Sorry, nobody was there. I must be hearing things.
That's totally fine. I think it could be the energy of you and I getting together, because when we get together, magic happens. So
Yeah, there you
I
go.
want to I want to fast forward a little bit. So you've finished college there in Texas, and what happens next in your life?
You know, spring break of between spring break senior year, I flew to New York City. I interviewed at a bunch of places, and I got an offer at this little ad agency, not doing what I wanted to do, but I ended up taking that offer and moved to New York City. And it was just spectacular. As a 22-year-old kid, who'd never been in a big city like that, to be living there and working at this ad agency in Times Square. It just blew my mind every day.
Yeah.
And it really sort of it woke up my eyes. I'd studied literature in college and economics, which is, concept heavy crap. And I feel that New York City really woke up my eyes because there was so much beauty around. And the more you look, the more you saw, and the more you saw, the more you wanted to look more. And so it sort of snowballed.
I feel the same way about the city. I still really romanticize it as someone who was born upstate, 5-6 hours away from it, and now has getting inched a little bit closer in the Hudson Valley. But I still, every time I go into the city, I feel that huge romanticization of it, of just feeling totally lost in the beauty, even of just the tourists in Times Square. That's been one of my favorite places to sit and people watch, and the city in general. It's just that magic, that hustle and bustle, it opens a lot of people's eyes, I think, not just you.
Yeah.
And you started, doing your ad agency stuff, but was there this hankering of, I want to do my own creative artwork as well?
No, not until that one Friday night where my roommate's like, let's make a painting.
Okay.
And that's when I really caught the bug. And he stopped painting, but I started dreaming of a career as an artist. And, at the time, one of the most famous artists was this guy named Julian Schnabel. And he said, well, I was either going to be a rock star or an artist. And it was like that. I'm like, wow, what a cool career to just be able to sort of like make your living making art. And so I started moving in that direction.
Well, I'm hearing the Rosendale sirens in the back. It sounds like we're in New York City here with the sirens and air horns and everything. That's what it's all about. This real world situations that we find ourselves in. We're all just a bunch of wild apes running around this world trying to make a living, trying to make some art. And sometimes, to come down and take all your creative energy and say, I'm going to meditate, take a deep breath, and go nuts on this canvas. It's something I've really admired. And just this week I actually bought, for the first time in my adult life, some art supplies, some brushes, a little canvas.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I'm feeling inspired right now. And it's just takes that freedom, of saying, most people hold themselves back and say, I can't do that, whatever it is. But no more of that. We've discovered together the power of believing in yourself. You can do anything if you really do set your mind to it and give it a good shot with all your energy. Nothing can't be done.
Yeah.
So Norm, you amazingly found yourself in Rhinebeck. Were you living in the city at the time of this, ad design job?
Yeah, I lived in New York City for 22 years.
Wow.
With some time off, I lived in London for a year, and then later on, I lived in the north of France in Normandy for a year. I lived in New Zealand, sort of the South Pacific, for much of a year.
What led to all that traveling?
Well, I got transferred. To the London office of the ad agency I was working for. Wow. And they had the agency I worked for in New York City had been bought by this huge London-based Saatchi & Saatchi, this huge London-based conglomerate. And they were moving people around to sort of like have it be sort of a small corporate world.
Yeah.
And so my buddy and I got transferred to the London office, which was amazing. It was so much fun. And from there, traveled a whole bunch and really sort of got a bit of the travel bug. And then a few years later, moved to Normandy for a year.
How'd you like that? It's got your name in the name of it.
It was fine. It was great. Yeah, I was, a friend of mine said, oh, well, let's move to France. And I said, you know what? I know some people from the London office of that ad agency who own a little house in the north of France in Normandy. Maybe they would let us house sit. So I wrote to them, and my letter arrived after like the fourth letter that year from the local police saying, your house has been broken into again. You need to do something about this. So the idea of having somebody living there and looking after it and having like the thieves sort of see that it's no longer a vacant place
Yeah.
really appealed to them. So we went and like lived there for a year. It was the dreamiest.
That's amazing. What a great opportunity to fall into your lap like that.
It was great. And at that point in time, I was painting. I'd left advertising. I was painting full time and had a couple of shows in Normandy. Was in a show in Paris, and it was a lovely life.
That's amazing. And you really found this perfect opportunity for yourself to be in this incredible new environment. And I'm sure that brought more eye-opening and amazing environment for you to create. It sounds perfect.
Yeah, it was ideal. We lived in a 17th century woodcutter's cottage on the edge of a national forest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Doesn't get better than that. This sounds like a novel starting up right there. So I'm loving this journey through your life because I've never really heard it before from you. So I
Yeah.
can imagine coming from 22 years in the city and then going to these other countries for the first time must have been a really amazing treat. That, how did you come back? Why not stay out of the US?
Oh, wow. Because New York was my home,
Yeah.
So I always wanted to come back. I had a nice place there that I would rent out, when I traveled.
Oh,
And,
nice. So you
New York,
still had a home base in New York.
yeah.
And then you came back and sort of settled down again in your own way. I mean, as artists, we never really settle down, but when did you kind of come back to Rhinebeck for the last chapter?
Well, in 2004, after 22 years in New York City, which included the, London and Normandy and New Zealand stuff, in 2004, we moved to Woodstock.
Nice.
And
Woodstock in 04. How was that environment in Woodstock, New York?
it was great. We'd been coming up on weekends, mooching off of friends who had like country houses and summer homes and stuff. And like lots of people, city people who come upstate on weekends, you start thinking, life would be pretty nice up here. And so we moved eventually full time.
And I see a lot of your credits, just skimming over your resume and things like that. A lot of things started happening for you in the Woodstock area. It seems like, in terms of finding your artistic community and finding support. How was this community as far as being an artist in the Hudson Valley?
I loved the arts community in Woodstock right away. And it was representative of sort of the broader mid-Hudson Valley arts community. One of the things I found right away, or felt right away, was that the artists I was meeting in the Woodstock area were exclusively interested in making art. And they were not interested in making the scene or looking cool or being hip or any of the things that so many city artists seemed to be interested in as well.
Yeah. Not doing it for the wrong reasons, but just doing it because they had to do it. The art was within them.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, exactly. But also, I mean, living in Woodstock, I mean, there was, when we moved up, there was not really a scene that you could make. There wasn't anywhere where you could go and be seen and, show up in paint splattered jeans and smoke a cigarette and be cool. And so nobody was really interested in being cool. And everybody was interested in advancing their art. And it was a great environment.
That's awesome. So you've really found your people here, and I see that you started doing more than just putting your art up on the walls, but you already started, it looks like, in the early 2000s, lecturing and giving speeches and kind of becoming a member of the community that was also, somewhat of a teacher or community builder. So when did you sort of did you always like talking to people and being sort of a speaker, or when did that come up in your life?
There was a big shift when I was like 30 and I was still living in New York City, and I was working in advertising as a creative director and copywriter. And there was a point where my portfolio of my work. And we had like these big physical portfolios that you'd schlep around to different agencies to get jobs. There was a point where I realized my portfolio was perfectly representative of my talents and my sensibilities, and that it wasn't falling short and it wasn't lying. It was just me. And when I realized that, if people didn't like the portfolio, they didn't hire me. I was like, that's okay. It's
Mm.
all, taste. I've got this thing out there that really is perfectly representative of me. And if people don't like it, that's just okay. And so that kind of translated and transferred to all areas of my life. And, any nervousness I might have had of speaking in front of people disappeared. I'm like, they don't like me. It's okay.
Yeah, I love that.
Because I'm putting the best me out there. It's not, I was, I don't want to, it's hard to say this without, it already sounds horrible in my head, but it was not a lesser me being presented to the world. And I didn't look at it and think, oh, I need to improve.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I was presenting as a whole person.
That seems to be happening. I can feel that coming as I approach 30, and
Uh,
this sort of sense of here's who I am. I'm confident in the work I've done thus far. I'm confident in my um, portfolio and all that I have to offer. So here I
right.
am. Take it or leave it.
Yeah. And you've got a great body of work. You've done so many wonderful things. And I hope you do. That way, I get the impression that you're already that way, very confident and comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah, thank you, Norm. I don't think I would be a film director who, would feel confident enough to ask you to be a part of it, which I'm excited to get into here. If I didn't have some sense of, okay, I've got a little bit of leadership, I've got some work I'm proud of. Here's who I am, and let me go for it. I saw something from one of our friends today posting, don't fake it till you make it. Face it till you make it. And just face
Oh,
it every day, all these opportunities we find ourselves in. Give it your all, face it strong, and stand up tall. And sure enough, at the end of the journey, you might find that you did a great job.
right.
Yeah, so it seems like you've really done that in your career. You've tell the folks a little bit about, like, if I was someone who met you on the subway, today and said, "Well, what kind of art do you do?" Like, I know it's such a large question, but I'm sure you've had to answer it before in your life. What do you give people as sort of the gist of some of your work? Because I know there's a lot of different mediums that you cover.
Oh, I'm a pain in the ass on that front. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. People have, I don't know why, but people kind of have to like pry. People say, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm an artist, and I mean, 9 times out of 10, that's the end of the questioning. People are like, "Oh, great."
Yeah.
Once in a while, somebody's like, "Oh, what kind of art?" And mostly, I will describe in superficial terms the thing that I'm currently working on,
Yeah.
and then if they're interested beyond that, then pull up a seat because I'm just gonna keep on talking.
Well, let's consider this one of those moments where I've pulled up a seat. You've got this amazing career, and I don't want to, shout out some of the things that I know you've done with my words, because I've just been a huge fan of what you've done visually. Before we even talk about you as an actor and a creative in that way on set, I think that your, visual medium is very interesting, and I'm curious to just see a little bit of the evolution of it from this period we're talking about, where you come back to the States, you come back to New York. What is a little bit of the arc of what you start with that really starts to be your bread and butter?
Okay. I started making paintings that incorporated various elements of other stuff, and specifically Mexican folk art sculpture. I started like putting polka dots on everything,
Yeah.
and drawing almost always like mountains, polka dotted mountains in the background, and animals. And I started making these animals symbolic of human conditions. And I started doing that. And I'm like, wow, look, I've got a style. I felt that I had a style that I could use, stay in like for ever and ever, that I could do an infinite number of paintings in that style. And I was painting these animals, and the whole group I call the animal allegories, because they're all these, you know, metaphorical animal paintings. And I just loved doing that. And eventually, when you're painting animals, eventually you're going to start doing work on environmental themes.
Yeah.
And so I did a bunch of paintings on environmental themes. And so much of the environment is wrapped up, sadly, in politics, especially here in the US. So from there, it was a short slide into doing more sort of politically focused work. And I was still creating the animal allegories, but I created a series of 7 paintings on America's 7 deadly sins, where I identified what I thought were the worst traits of America. And then I did a counterbalancing series on America's 7 cardinal virtues, the 7 best things about the US. And so, you know, started doing a lot of sort of more pointed, politically focused work.
Do you have a couple of those examples of either the cardinals or, you know, the 7 deadly sins for us?
You know, the best way to see them is to go to my website, funism.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, when I had my first show of paintings lined up, I was writing a press release. And I was like, I don't want to write a press release. I'm going to create a movement. And so I created a movement called FUNISM. And the idea is that art should be intellectually engaging without being intellectually elitist, and that it should be as much fun to look at as it is to think about.
I absolutely love that. And thinking about art and thinking about all of the amazing things you've done, it's really amazing. I mean, I've looked at some of these, it's just, they feel so framed perfectly, and just like such your character and your spirit within them, all the way back from the animal allegories to what you're doing today. I love your style, and I think it's such a cool thing to support and have an artist here. And your website is very unique, very minimalistic. And talk a little bit to the folks who like, what is funism? How would you define that movement?
Well, just, I mean, those 2 basic tenets,
Yeah.
you know, intellectually engaging without being elitist and fun to look at and think about. Eventually, I added a 3rd point to it, which is that art should invite interpretation.
Yeah.
And just saying it right now, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, for me, I really like art that invites interpretation, that you look at and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And that there is something going on there, and that you can spend some time thinking about it. And I think that art that's aesthetically pleasing, you're happier to spend some time thinking about it if it looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really does, you know, not only look good, it is fun to talk about, it is fun to see. And I was really moved as the pandemic rolled on and as the world was going through the more recent stuff. I was very impressed and taken aback by your I-75 project there, the amazing work that you did with these signs that we all know very familiar, sort of the "on this site stood" sign. Tell the folks a little bit about what inspired you and what this project was.
You know, so we moved up from the city in 2004, and I had made a bunch of 30-second TV commercials as an artist about the hypocrisy of George Bush, and because I wanted to do everything I could to make sure that he was not elected. And so I did these things, and I thought they were great. And my gallery at the time sold them to collectors for the price of airing them on TV. and they got aired some. They got like 500,000 views, which is a lot for a piece of art, but not a lot for a commercial. But as an artist, I had all kinds of latitude in terms of my messaging, so I did that. And then the election was over, and we moved upstate, and I started seeing these blue and yellow historical markers around. And one day I was talking with a friend of mine, and she said, "Well, what's next?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I'm thinking about doing these, blue and yellow historical markers, but instead of like a famous person slept here or a famous battle happened there, having them deal with contemporary political and social things." And she said, "Oh my God, that's fucking awesome." And I'm like, "It's okay, whatever." And then she called a month later. She said, I'm curating an outdoor sculpture show. Would you make one for that? And so I made the first one. And it was really, it just took off. That first marker was in a sculpture show there. And then another sculpture show was in shows in the city at various places. And I got a lot of press. And so that whole series just sort of snowballed, and I'm still doing it to this day.
Yes, and they're always such amazing messages that feels like, okay, this is like the real history that is there, like that you would not normally see on these, sort of the bias pro-America story that you normally see on those. These are kind of supporting the undersung heroes often, or exposing something people might not know about. So they're very cool. How did you do that? How did you study that form or get it to look so much like the originals?
Well, I went to the foundry that makes the originals. It's cast aluminum, and I don't know anything about pouring molten aluminum in sand. And so I went to the foundry. And I said, "Hey, I got an idea. I want to do this. Can you do that?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Let me ask you another question." I said, "Probably lots of other artists like wanted to do this." And he's like, "No, never." I'm like, "Oh, good." And so I started doing those things, and it's been an amazing body of work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such an amazing thing, and continue doing it, please. It's really, really special, and I hope to continue to support that. And I'm just glad that all of these things are part of what you do, and that you also said, what can I do as an artist to help, make sure this guy doesn't get elected again? That kind of political work and making the world a better place, that goes beyond what the average artist does. I think in a lot of ways every artist is helping, but to really step forward in the way, those kinds of political ways, I think is super admirable, and absolutely what makes you really stand apart, Norm. So this is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I'll share this. When I did those first videos before that Bush election, I had this really overwhelming thought that I did not want to wake up the morning after the election and think that I hadn't tried to use all the talents at my disposal to affect the outcome. I didn't want to wake up the morning after the election and have him elected, which he was, and know that I hadn't tried my hardest. And that's it's so satisfying when you can look back without regret.
yeah, and I think a lot of the people listening, young people, this is the kind of art and inspiration that I think we need to all carry into our creativity, because yes, just making art to begin with is something that can really help the culture and make it a better place. But if you have some sort of thing that you want to see achieved, if you want to speak truth to power and you want to rise up using all your powers for good, I think we have to use all the tools at our disposal to try to make the world a better place if you can. If you don't want to wake up on November 7th and say, I wish I did something,
Right.
I'm glad you did, Norm. It's very inspirational for this generation. And I love it. Is there more of your work, anything else besides those paintings that kind of you think takes on that similar tone of kind of speaking truth to power, or maybe a little bit more of this controversial stuff that you've done?
I think I sent you a link to that blog. I love blogs. They're so easy to put together, and you can have links to stuff. And I just sort of like put together a blog that's a different sort of take on my creative work. And it's called apointedstick.blogspot.com. I don't know if you got a chance to look at that,
I
but it's
did. It's
packed
very
with
cool.
stuff that that is more in that vein, like whether it's stuff that I'm planning on doing or stuff I've already done. Um, so if anybody's listening, it's apointedstick.blogspot.com. And one of the things on there that answers your question, I think, Joe, is a planned piece. And it's one of those sliders, a little square thing that kids slide, and you slide a tile here and it'd be like 3x3 or 4x4, and you slide them so that you bring them together and they form a cohesive image.
Yeah, a little puzzle.
And I'm trying to find a place that can make them big enough, because they're really small off the rack. And it says something like, while you were protesting this or arguing about that, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And it's about how the voting populace is so distracted by all these other issues when there's this huge story, which is the rich are continuing to get richer and the poor are continuing to get poorer and disenfranchised. And that has happened under every single president of both parties for the past 40 years. And, and people fighting about, immigration, and fighting about healthcare, and fighting about, reproductive rights. And these fights are all consuming for so many people, but they're also a distraction from what I think is a bigger story.
Yeah. How do we find that balance too? Because, there is some things that are trying to divide us and distract us. And then there's what do we really have in our capabilities of changing and being something we can actually do. And I think protesters are so necessary and amazing. And this is an interesting message here. While you were out there angry or shocked or protesting, the powers that be, the rich got richer and you got poorer. That's powerful. It's almost a hopeless message, but what does it mean to you? Or, in terms of if a protester was reading it, you're not necessarily saying don't do it, but at the end of the day, no matter what you're doing, the motion is still happening.
Yeah, that's all. Just that's it, and that piece and the historical markers and stuff. I keep thinking, if one person looks at it and thinks, oh, maybe, or if it just softens their point of view on something or informs. And for the slider puzzle, which as you pulled up, while you're mad or shocked or protesting or pissed off, the rich got richer and you got poor. If somebody is like, yeah, you're right, these other things are not the lead story, that's the lead story, and it's getting buried. If somebody thinks that, that's awesome. And it raises the attendant question, well, what's the role of political art? And in my heart, it's that it would open somebody's heart and mind to seeing things in a different way.
Absolutely. And there's the old quote I love of the performer, which is just, if I made one person happy today, or if I made one person smile or think about it differently, I was a success. So
yeah,
absolutely, you have done more than that, Norm. You've totally touched many lives. And I want to give it a little bit into one other part of your kind of visual medium, and then we can start talking more about how we got to know each other. I love what you did once of taking these found paintings and creating, monsters in them.
Yeah.
What was that all about, and how did that originate and continue on as a series?
I think I saw it online somewhere, people painting monsters on postcards and stuff. And I was like, oh, that looks fun. And so I started doing it with the kids on vacation. Would get postcards and just, paint monsters on them. And the kids just loved it for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've loved it for like 20 years. So
That's so great, and it's been something you've continued to do. Do you still search when you're at a thrift store or a rummage sale
I
for
do.
potential?
I look for paintings. So we get a small collection of them here waiting to be painted on. People always sell artwork cheap at yard sales and stuff. And sometimes you look at them and it's like, oh, look, there's a perfect space to put a monster. Sometimes they just really invite that kind of vision. And then I'll buy them.
That's amazing. And just the repurposing of things and kind of adding your own spin to it. It's really great. It almost reminds me of in hip hop and rap, how they kind of take an old song and spin it and sample it and make a new version of it. It's kind of
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So definitely you've got so many values of your work. And when I first met you, I came to the region here in 2018. And I believe the first time we met, you were totally shaved, mustache and all, and you were Bill Murray's body double.
It was his stand-in and
Stand-in.
photo double.
Yeah, I thought you were the stunt guy for a
I
second.
don't think he had any need for a body double. But yeah, it was his stand-in and photo double. It was so much fun.
You were such an amazing presence on set, and I was a zombie. Of course, we were on the Dead Don't Die, Jim
That Jim
Jarmusch movie.
Jarmusch film. That was such a wonderful experience.
It really was. My gosh, so many friends that were made on that set between the Hudson Valley background actors have still remained true and close to this day.
Yeah, and now I think we got to give a shout out to Amy and Heidi,
Yes.
the casting pros who put all of that together.
They did. They got a great group of people, and I'll never forget driving in that morning. I think I was running a little late, and I was driving slowly and seeing the gravesite, and I saw Jim, and I saw Bill Murray, and all these people in the sets. It was my first day ever on a movie set, and I was so excited, and I was so late. I think I had to chase down the bus with all the background. Wait for me! And sure enough, we got on the set, and on my first take as a zombie, I made the mistake of doing this, going like, come on, kind of a gesture. And sure enough, one of the ADs had to say, guys, you're zombies. You're completely brain dead. No hand gestures, no movements. We're going to have to kill that take. And I was like, I wonder who did that.
Oh, and I never heard that.
Yeah, that was my first take on a big movie set. And sure enough, I would figure out my way to be a great zombie. I took it a little too seriously. I would walk to craft services kind of still in my zombie walk and have Nico say, come on, cut it out, man. You're going to give me a headache.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, there was so many fun moments there. And we only briefly kind of encountered, I think, during that set. And I got to know you more on Taylor Suepel's film, Suicide Eyes. So
Yeah.
How did you meet Taylor? But even, I guess, before that, how did you come into your first time acting?
Oh, boy. Well, so living in Woodstock, I read the newspaper one day, and there was a call for auditions for a David Mamet play. And I was like, oh, I want to do that, because I had acted in high school and really enjoyed it. And then I didn't do anything for like 30 years or something. And I thought, oh, good, I'm going to go try out. And so I went and I auditioned, and I got the part and just fell in love. I love acting. Of all the creative things I do, it's definitely my favorite.
That's amazing. So you found that was your first play, and that was in Woodstock?
That was my first play as an adult,
Yeah.
and then in plays in high school and stuff, and probably, junior high and grade school and junk. But yeah, that was my first one.
What was it called?
It was called The Water Engine.
Hmm.
And it was an early Mamet play. And I played this evil, smarmy lawyer. I got slapped every performance.
That's so fun.
This woman slapped me because I'd killed her brother, and she sussed that and she slapped me. and we tried it a couple of times with like fake slaps and somebody like clapping off stage, and it just didn't work. I'm like, you know what? You just got to slap me. And so every performance should just smack me. And it was always surprising. I was always shocked to be getting slapped, which is a
Yeah.
good sign, I guess.
That'll
But
ground you and take you to a special place as an actor every time.
yeah, yeah. But also I enjoyed making decisions that would make the acting in the play better.
Yeah, and those kinds of choices, you know, it's all about your choices as an actor and how do you do it? How do you bring what energy do you bring forth? And I can tell, already, so kind of coming into it with that confidence and having a sense of the visual medium, how was that transition for you to then use your body and be sort of one of the many colors on the painting, as we've talked about before? You
Yeah.
are actually one of the pieces that can help somebody else's vision come to life. How was that for you in the play? And then moving on to, when was it that you went on in front of a camera?
Right. Well, yeah, I think you're alluding to this thing that I always say, which is, my day job, mostly making art. Like I'm the boss, I do whatever I want, and it's all me. And then acting gigs, in theater or um, in movies or whatever, you're just one part of somebody else's canvas, and somebody else is the artist, and you're just a color on their palette, and your job is just to be the best color you can. And so it was always, and still, it's always nice to just kind of, I know this sounds weird, to take your ego out of it. It's like, this is not my thing. This is our thing, or it's you, the director's thing. And it's a whole different vibe for a creative professional. And so I really enjoy that. So anyway, moved from Woodstock, where I did a bunch of plays, to Rhinebeck, and my kid was friends with this guy here, the son of Jonathan Burkhart, who I think you know.
Yeah.
And Jonathan said, "Oh, well, you're an actor. You should meet Heidi and Amy." And so I met Heidi and Amy, and they started putting me in movies.
That's amazing. And you took on a friend of mine, Taylor, who both of us know. You took on a role in his where when we received your tape, Norm, I was actually part of the team, and we said, my God, can we cast this guy as every role? He's just brings such a great, simple energy to this. We need him involved.
I
So,
love that story, because
yeah,
somehow I got the casting call, and you were casting for a coroner, the father,
the
the
man.
other self, yeah, the man, and I was like, all right, I'll read for all of them. And I love that you all liked my audition for all of them.
We really did, and we knew that you had to be a part of it. And Taylor's film, for those who don't know, Suicide Eyes, is really heavy movie that is all about the aftermath of somebody who commits suicide. And as tough as that sounds to take on, now try adding the dynamic of comedy to it as well underneath, as sort of a dark comedy in there too in some ways. So somehow Taylor made a little masterpiece with this, and I think, Norm, you being a part of it had so much to do with it. And
It's I guess that's nice of you to say, but Taylor's film is it's just it turned out so nice. And Taylor, I've only seen it sort of screened out in public, with him telling the story of how it came to happen. He had a lot of suicide in his world, and was moved to make this film. And it's moving. It is funny. Some of the other actors, especially Rick Lang, who played the coroner,
Rhino Rick,
yeah,
yes.
was very funny. Some of my lines were pretty snarky and kind of funny.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the
absolutely.
film itself turned out great, and it's so nice as an actor to see the film, be like, wow, the film's it's strong and powerful. Same thing with your film, Through the Brush,
Yeah.
because when you're acting, you don't have the vision. I'm just a color in your palette, and I don't know how good a painter you are, or how good you're going to be at painting this particular painting. which was you turned out to be very good at putting together Through the Brush.
Thank you, Norm. Yeah, I mean, after what we did with Suicide Eyes, I knew I wanted to work with you again and again. And, surely my first creative project was in 2019, where I came up to you first, which was this idea with the same guy who went on to write Through the Brush, saying we wanted to do an adaptation of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh man, that was such a blast.
Yeah, that was something that was just perfect. The first time we came to you with the idea, we sat together and watched the film on an old projection screen and just had a great time taking it in. And you actually brought forth some of the great actors, Ali and Deborah, and just it brought these people forward who ended up being such a crucial part. And we did this amazing collaboration together to create a very special 1 night, 2 night version of Inside the Cuckoo's Nest, sort of taking people through the experience of being in the Cuckoo's Nest with Nurse Ratchet McMurphy and yourself, who played Harding.
Right, Mr. Harding.
Yes.
That was so good. You called up and you said, or texted, you said, I'm going to do this sort of like experimental, like free form, semi-improv live theater version of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Do you want to do that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was so much fun. And your direction on that was just gonzo. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? But you had a real loose, real gentle touch on the whole thing. And it allowed it to really have this beautiful energy. And again, as an actor, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck Joe's doing. But then it's done, and it's like, that worked out great. So
yeah, it was really special. And we just did 2 nights of it, 2 shows, and it was in the chapter, but it felt like we were really paying tribute to Ken Kesey, the original writer, and the way he wanted Cuckoo's Nest to be, which sort of had more of Chief's voice in there. So I was very honored to try to do that, try to take that on and do our own spin on it, completely different from what you would see in the theater, in the theatrical play that went on for years. But my gosh, you were such a great pleasure to work with on that. So when time came to create my own first short film outside of film school, Through the Brush, this story of a man in one side of the creek, he's living in a mansion and he's miserable, Mr. Lost, as we called him. And on the other side of the creek, he's sort of this Buddha-like peaceful shaman living in a hut, and his Mr. Found. So, Norm, once again, we were so good and such a pleasure to work with that we actually said, why don't we cast Norm as both parts?
Yeah. And then you called up, you're like, hey, I'm doing this thing. You play both parts. I was like, oh yeah, I want to do that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Because I've never done that before.
2 characters in one film.
And again, the movie turned out great.
Yeah. Thank you. And for folks who want to see it, you can go to patreon.com/happenstancery. It's a first pin post on top, and it's a 17-minute experimental film. And like Norm said here, all great art, this is open for interpretation. It kind of makes you bend your head and say, what's going on?
Yeah. And it was funny, the script was a lot longer, and we filmed a lot more stuff, and you pared it down. And it became, with each new, edit and cutting out of stuff, it became more open for interpretation. And I think that really ended up being great.
Yeah. And I worked really closely with the writer on that, Anthony Hamilton, who helped me pare it down because, I was really trying to serve his text. And we realized you don't need to shove it down people's throats with a lot of extra information. Like, art can be simple.
And the music was so good.
Yes, we did use local Hudson Valley musicians, including my fiancée, Serena Hope. It's her song that we actually took the new title, because at first it was called Lost and Found, that we knew we wanted that. So we took her title of Through the Brush, Through the Pine, from her song that is the ending credits. And yes, Danny Asis and Sam Johnson, thank you guys for making an incredible soundtrack. But Norm, you were such a pleasure to work with from the very first day on set. being willing to take it on and to grow out your beard for the role when we needed you to be the guy in the hut and shave it and put on the glasses for the other guy. You brought so much energy, and just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping these young filmmakers like me and Taylor and everybody else I've sent your way, because I've brought your name up to other amazing creatives, and you've sure enough showed up, did what they needed with a smile on your face and your own unique Norm way. So just thanks for all that you've done for all of these local Hudson Valley productions, really, from the bottom of my heart.
They've all done so much for me. I love acting. And, I'll tell you what, I had a moment after the first screening of Taylor's film, Suicide Eyes, where I saw me on the screen. I was like, oh God, I'm horrible. I'm terrible. And it was just like, oh, fuck. Like, I just was not happy at all. And after about an hour, which is pretty fast, I was like, what do I care? People keep asking me to do it, and I love doing it. And I'm doing the best I can. I haven't figured out how to do it better. So I'm giving it all I can and enjoying it. And was my performance good or bad? I don't know, but I love doing it.
Yeah, and like you said, it's subjective, and you are having fun. That's all that matters. You're bringing their honesty to it. That's why a lot of actors don't even look at their own work sometimes, because of those feelings. Leave your ego at the door and allow yourself to be, received and respected, because truly, Norm, you have worked with a lot of amazing, talented people and gone far beyond just being a double and a photo double. You are a real deal actor, and we're just getting started. So together, I know I want to work with you again and again. And we're both working with Vinny Velez, who you've worked with on some other films.
Oh, yeah.
Together, we're trying to create some sort of comedy sketch team. That is a new thing that's kind of developing. So I'm excited for that. And what would you like to tell any other directors, creatives who are listening to this from the Hudson Valley about what it is you do, and to have them keep you in mind for future projects?
Oh, I don't know. I'll tell you this. I love auditioning. I really love auditioning. So, if anybody's listening, any casting people or, directors or somebody looking for talent, call me up. I'd love to audition.
Awesome. And I got a big audition myself coming up. What's the secret, for a successful audition for you? Do you go in there with kind of just I don't care if you like me or not kind of attitude?
Quite often, I think, because I have been on the other side of it, talent enters the casting room and you look at them, you're like, no, you're not right. Like, before they even said hello, it's like, yeah, you're not right. And so decisions are made all the time on that front, I think, that have nothing to do really with how you are.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's not the look we wanted.
For sure.
So, it's easy to not take that personally. Mm-hmm. And so, I want them to like me. I want to perform well. I want to do well, but I always do the best I can. And, I don't beat myself up so much.
That's good. Yeah, don't, Norm. You offer so much to the culture, your FUNISM movement, your art, your acting. And also I wanted to promote on here, check out Norm's podcast and weekly radio show, Correct Me If I'm Norm. Tell the folks how that came to be and what that's all about.
Well, during the lockdown, major lockdown section of the pandemic, this guy, Matt Rosenberg, down there in Rhinecliff, was missing community. And so he opened his back window of his house, and he would serve cocktails for neighborhood people to have in a socially distant outdoor way. And then when the lockdown eased and people started getting sort of back out there, he really wanted to continue creating community. And he had this idea of doing a little radio station. And a mutual friend said, oh, hey, Matt Rosenberg started a radio station, and he wants somebody to come on and sort of interview people. I was like, oh, I've never done that. Like, yeah, count me in. And so I texted Matt, and he said, great. when do you want to do it? I said, Fridays from 5 to 6. So every Friday from 5 to 6 p.m., I'm live interviewing somebody on this sort of like internet radio station, radiofreerhinecliff.org.
That's amazing. I will definitely continue to promote that and send folks over there. And it's really an amazing thing. You got everybody from car experts to other artists to, such unique variety of people in the
Yeah.
neighborhood.
Yeah. I try and keep it to Rhinebeck people.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll have somebody from Red Hook. Early on, I had one Kingston, one Woodstock people, but now it's really focused on Rhinebeck, which is nice.
That's awesome. Well, please keep it in mind for any of those creatives who want to talk. Joe's Java Jive is just at the early infancy. I'm going to be posting on midnight on Fridays to social media, to Spotify. So for folks who are, hopefully I'm going to get this one out in time to promote your upcoming event. Do you want to just in closing tell folks, if you're listening to this when it first came out, what we have to expect? What are you doing this Saturday, February 3rd?
It's called The Porch, and this guy, Joey Chevelle, I think he originated anyway. He's the MC. And it's up at Katzbahn in Tivoli. And it's storytellers on stage, no notes, telling true stories. And so I'm going to be one of, I think, 7 or 8 storytellers, standing up there and telling a story. And it's sold out. It just sold out yesterday. So,
wow. Okay. So we don't promote it too much. If you already got tickets, great. But if you ever see a chance to see Norm speak and do his lectures, I was there at your amazing first lecture that I witnessed, where you talked about, both of the, being on set of The Dead Don't Die, actually. And it was really
right.
sweet of you, talking about that and that experience. I also, and remind me, what was the other half of that presentation there? You told the story.
The first half of that was called Swipe Right. It was like a 35-minute monologue on, searching for love in the digital era.
Yeah. Oh, it was so amazing, Norm. And then the follow-up, the amazing lecture you gave on porn and its effects on the culture.
Yeah. That was that was something else. That accompanied a gallery exhibition of art that I'd done, porn weavings. The woman who's running the gallery there in Saugerty said, well, I'm showing visual artists who also have a performative element to their work. I'm like, oh, I was going to write a monologue on this originally. And so I did the monologue and performed that there.
Well, I just love when you go to a Norm Magnusson monologue and you see, the little bear lamp and the amazing props you got on the stage. And it's like sitting down to listen to Mark Twain from, back in the day, talk about the issues of the time. So I'm just so thankful to know you, Norm, and to be able to be in arm's reach and to go and see these amazing events. I will be there and supporting you and all the stories you continue to tell. And thanks for telling it to the audience here at Joe's Java Jive for episode 2.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for all the support you've given me over the years and all the opportunities you brought my way to do fun and new things. I mean, really, thank you so much, because I love doing all of those things with you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure of my life to work with you, Norm. They say art is love is God, and making art with you. Yep, I live by that quote too. And I know together what we've been able to do on sets, on stage, and just seeing you be the way you are in this world. I hope to continue to create and just get started when it comes to doing lectures of my own and paintings of my own. And you are an inspiration. So for my generation, this is a great example of a man who you can look at and say, all right, he is doing some really amazing art. And he's also saying yes to life, whether it be jumping on a crazy film by some New Paltz students for next to nothing, or whether it's, telling a story and powering through being Bill Murray's body double when you got a sore back and you're powering through the pain.
Right.
Yes. Thanks for everything, Norm. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Absolutely. If you ever want to be back on the show and you have something to promote, we can continue talking for hours with you about all the amazing work you've done. So check out funism.com, folks, for more.
Yeah, baby.
All right. Have a beautiful day. Peace and love, Norm.
Thanks, Joe. Back at you.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.